So much to talk about in the world of the Minnesota Vikings today. First off, we have 3 roster moves made as it pertains to the Vikings offensive line, as well as another potential move or two that's being considered by the Vikings brass. So not rumored, this was actually reported, both of these cases, by Diana Rossini of The Athletic. And lastly, a rumor that seemed to have just fell out of the sky. I don't think this was reported. I think this is more of a Vikings Twitter thing or a Vikings fandom thing. And I if I had to link a cause behind this, I think it's because we're still riding, most of us anyway, we're still riding the natural high that we got of the first wave of free agency in which the Minnesota Vikings absolutely dominated. But first, the roster moves made today, all on the offensive line. The Minnesota Vikings traded away Ed Ingram to the Houston Texans for a future 6th-round pick. And if it wasn't enough of a concerted effort by the Vikings front office to make significant upgrades in the trenches at the same time, they are also respectfully getting rid of the dead weight, Ed Ingram being one of them. The fact that you were able to trade Ed Ingram and get more than a bologna sandwich with half a squirt of mustard on it is crazy in itself. A 6th-round pick, that you're going to send him over to the Texans to help out CJ Stroud? Houston Texans, what are you doing? And I saw this on Twitter. I think the account is Bleacher Report Gridiron, and I'm going to include a screenshot in this video. You can tell just how naive all of us are, myself included, until you do a little damn research. Every time you see an offensive lineman get traded from one team to another, it doesn't fail. Some account will say, oh, they added Ed Ingram to the Texans, bolstering up the Texans' offensive line, boosting up the offensive line. This is a huge addition for CJ Stroud. Bleacher Report Gridiron actually said Ed Ingram is a huge addition. With the actual hand praise up. Like, thank goodness CJ Stroud's got some help. If you only do some research, you'll realize he's one of the worst players in football. And not only that, talking about moves on the offensive line, traded Ed Ingram. The Minnesota Vikings are set to release Garrett Bradbury if they are unable to come up with a trade. So the very idea that you could get something for Ed Ingram and nothing for Garrett Bradbury is even more wild than trading Ed Ingram for a 6th-round pick in the first place. Just because, and we know how bad Garrett Bradbury is, but everything that we come up with as far as excusing his poor play, well, he's a 6-year starting center in this league. Of course, he's going to provide some sort of value for one of the other 31 teams in football. But he's going to be gone. Whether they trade him or release him, we're good with it. And the third move made today on the Vikings offensive line, the Vikings are signing Justin Skule, offensive tackle from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So this is a depth piece, nothing more than that. But obviously, depth is very important. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has made the decision, along with Kevin O'Connell. Ed Ingram is not worth the damn as a depth piece. Neither is Garrett Bradbury. Because he makes too much money, but even still, good riddance. Go ahead and try to compete for a starting job somewhere else. Good luck to you. But now moving to 2 names connected to the Minnesota Vikings in terms of having consideration from the Vikings of maybe bringing said players in. Both reported by Diana Rossini. We're going to get to Aaron Rodgers first. I've said this time and time again. I want no parts of Aaron Rodgers with the Minnesota Vikings organization. And I get it. The storyline, the parallel storyline that would be between Rodgers and Brett Favre, where you're legends in Green Bay. You win a championship with the Packers. You go over to the Jets. You disappoint there. You go over to the Vikings, star-studded cast, and you go off for an all-time great season. I actually believe in some cases that storylines within sports are actually more interesting, intriguing to the average fan than the actual result of the sports product itself. Meaning, the Eagles, they won the championship. They busted up the Kansas City Chiefs' hopes of being the first team to three-peat, and that was great. But if Aaron Rodgers were to join the Vikings, this would dominate the entire summer, the entire offseason, nonstop on the Pat McAfee show, every major show that you can think of, this would be the number one story. But with Aaron Rodgers, there's baggage. You're not just getting a football player. You're getting unnecessary drama, like the end of his tenure with the Green Bay Packers, where instead of just saying what it is that he wants, I got to broadcast to the world that I'm going to go to Oregon in a dark cave and sit there for 5 days and really contemplate what it is that I'm going to do. And he rose from the cave and said, well, I need more time to think, and had to broadcast to the Pat McAfee show, yeah, you know what? I want to get traded to the New York Jets. And then this past offseason, well, not this offseason, but last year's offseason, skipped mandatory minicamp, calling it glorified OTAs. If you got just the football player itself, I guess I could be down with it, maybe, but there's just too much added crap. Say you have a bad game on Sunday, and then I got to turn around and see this dude on Pat McAfee talking about how he sautés pine cones and egg whites for breakfast. I'm not trying to see that crap. It's a distraction. It would undo everything that KOC and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah have built over these last 3 years. They are so tight-lipped and all about the culture, but because it's being reported, this is not a rumor, that the Vikings are actually considering bringing in Aaron Rodgers. Why is that the case? Number one, they're trying to chase. They're chasing for the chance to win a Super Bowl title right now. Everything that they've done so far in free agency, they've built up this roster enough to where you can plug and play a really good quarterback and give yourselves a real shot to hoist the Lombardi trophy. So they could be chasing. That's really option number one. Option number two, why they're considering this, do they not really believe in JJ McCarthy right now as much as we, the fan base, believe in JJ McCarthy right now? Is it just a temporary thing where it's like, all right, he needs another year? Or is it like, we really aren't sure about this guy, in which case that part would end up being a waste of a first round pick on a quarterback? It's very confusing. I don't know what to make of it. I sure as hell hope he doesn't end up on this team. Aaron Rodgers, I'm ready for the JJ McCarthy era to start. You've done so well, Vikings leadership. Don't throw it all in the toilet, but you got to trust. This is actually probably the first time, or certainly less than a handful of times, 2 or 3 times, where I've said, you know what, I'm actually going to trust the Vikings leadership here. Like, whatever, based off of what they've done so far, boosting up the trenches on both sides of the ball, if they don't think that JJ is ready quite yet, and they want to take a shot in the dark with Aaron Rodgers, everything else they have built up, plug and play, let's ride. If they want to do that, okay, but I'm not going to be happy. Oh, Pat, let me tell you something. I'm sure you brush your teeth with fluoride every morning and every night, but have you considered brushing your teeth with arugula? It will change your life. Get out of here. Oh my God, please don't bring him on. Okay. The second player that is being reported that the Vikings are considering bringing in is wide receiver Cooper Kupp, formerly of the LA Rams. And while I will say the name Cooper Kupp is sexy in itself, separating the name from the game, what he did in 2021, stud, triple crown, absolutely dominant. He has been nowhere close to that same guy since that time. That said, at this stage in his career, he's a really, really good wide receiver 3. On this team, Jets is 1, Addison 2. Cooper Kupp would be a good possession receiver. A really good possession receiver. Okay. If they want to bring in Cooper Kupp, and if the money is right, say a 1-year or 2-year deal, I get the familiarity with Cooper Kupp and KOC when KOC was the OC with the Rams. Cooper Kupp was there, triple crown. They won the championship. They want to bring him in on a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal worth, say, $7 million per year max. Sure, why not? I'm all for it. Go for it. Lastly, I want to get to this rumor that seemingly just poofed out of nowhere. This is not being reported as far as an actual consideration for the Vikings to try to do. And I think the cause of it is we in Vikings Nation, Vikings Twitter, Vikings fandom, were so blown away by just the outstanding job that the Vikings front office had done the first wave of free agency. It's like you got the N64 for Christmas in the early 2000s with GoldenEye and Mario Kart. But oh my God, that's so exciting. We want more. We want more. The Vikings have hot takes circulating right now talking about should the Vikings trade Jordan Addison to the New York Jets for cornerback Sauce Gardner. I don't even know where to start with this. First off, it's not going to happen, but just to entertain this circus here, I would say no. I would rather keep Jordan Addison than trade Jordan Addison for Sauce Gardner. Just because in my perfect world, J.J. McCarthy is the starter, and you want him to have as much help as possible on the offensive side of the ball. You've already upgraded massively the interior defensive line. The edge rushers are going to be great. You've got really good linebackers. Harrison Smith, and that's another thing that I failed to mention. There's so much going on in the Vikings world. Harrison Smith is returning for his 14th season, and I like this move a lot. Number one, it keeps the story of the legend alive, but also it maintains some level of leadership. Cam Bynum is going to be gone. Theo Jackson, he's going to be a starting safety next year. You don't necessarily want him. If you had to do it, if Hitman decided to retire, then okay, Josh Metellus, you're going to be a full-time safety, or Jay Ward, you're going to be the opposite safety of Theo Jackson. But in an ideal scenario, you want Theo Jackson to have some sort of leadership back there with him. I love the fact that Hitman is returning for season number 14. This defense, without making any other moves, that before whatever you include in the draft or whatever other moves that you make in free agency, this defense is going to be great in 2025. Adding Sauce Gardner, it would make it greater, sure, but I would rather have that extra boost on the offensive side of the ball to help out a guy, first-year starter, ideally J.J. McCarthy. So just to recap, love what they did roster moves wise on the offensive line. Ed Ingram, Garrett Bradbury, they're gone. They brought in Justin Skule, depth piece, offensive tackle from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Considering Aaron Rodgers, I don't love it. I guess I can somewhat get down with it, but I won't be happy whatsoever. Ideally, I hope they don't do it. Cooper Kupp, sure, why not? Sauce Gardner, it's not going to happen. We'll see you tomorrow, folks.